we start. Oh, just got that, got it. Very excited to be starting the spring term for our Centre of Educational Neuroscience seminar series. It's great to see a few people here, and I'm sure we'll get a few more as we continue. So today we've got Ulrich Dettweiler, Professor Ulrich Dettweiler from the University of Stavanger. Very excited to have you here. So Ulrich Dettweiler is a professor of pedagogy at the Faculty of Arts and Education at the University of Stavanger and heads the faculty's doctoral program and the university's cognitive and behavioral neuroscience lab. In addition, Ulrich has just been appointed at the Norwegian Centre for Learning Environment and Behavioral Research in Education, which is both a research centre and a national education centre. His research mainly focuses on cognitive and motivational aspects of education outside the classroom and their biophysiological substrates. He's also interested in epistemological, methodological, and ethical aspects of research. And I'm very, very, very excited to have you here to talk about your work on the effect of education on brain development and stress. So thank you so much for being here today. And I also just want to reiterate, please feel free throughout the talk to pop your questions and comments in the chat, and I will read them out later, or you can unmute and ask questions yourself if you'd prefer to do so. And I also have a little announcement regarding an upcoming conference, so stick around for that. So with that, I'm going to pass you over to Ulrich. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for the invitation and the opportunity to talk to you today. I shared my screen and I just want to double check it's working. Very nice. So yes, I have been invited to talk about pupils' biological stress regulation and brain maturation in an outdoor education project. This is almost an oxymoron that people from outdoor education think about pupils' stress regulation and brain maturation. I think this is the first study of its kind where an outdoor educator actually put children into a MR scanner and tried to find something. And this calls for an apology. Starting with an apology is a great tradition among theologians, and being a theologian by training myself, this actually calls for it. The function of an apology is, of course, to appear smarter in the end than the actual talk is, because one sets the expectations low. And this is what I'm trying to lure you into, to forgive me that this is actually the work of an educator who burns for the outdoors and is a German in the first place. So my English is very, very thick, colored by a German accent, and even worse, since I'm working in Norway, colored also by Norwegian. And my everyday work is a transition between two national languages spoken in Norway, German and English. So if I get confused and get stuck on the ways and using funny expressions, this is just that my brain is too slow to process four languages at the same time and talk about these topics, switching from one language to another just in a second. And of course, the apology is also that I'm trying to get away with this study, and you will see that this study actually raises more questions than answers. But maybe this is a good thing and should be a good thing in research too. So I'm making a humble attempt to sell you this project, which is an interesting construction, since this study was conducted in Germany, actually. And this school in Germany established an outdoor education program using a Scandinavian model of outdoor education, which is a weekly day also 1 day per week taught in the forest nearby the school over the whole school year. So 20% of all the teaching the children had was in the forest. And the school managed to collect the lessons in physical education, biology, and geography to allocate to the outdoor teaching. And the children in this forest group had exactly the same teaching contents or cognitive load as the normal classes that had been taught indoors. So that actually called for a study. So having, in theory, the perfect control group in the same school was the reason why we actually also got the funding for this project. Just a little bit about outdoor schooling. So if you look at this map in Norway, you can see that the prevalence of outdoor schooling is immensely high and quite homogeneous, with this two small exceptions. So Oslo is a little bit lower, so darker is lower. And the area southwest of Oslo has exceptional high outdoor schooling. So almost 90% of all schools in Norway have some sort of outdoor schooling. EOtC is education outside the classroom. That's an international abbreviation. It's a convention we use. If we now look at, so this is when schools are asked to tick off, do you have outdoor schooling at your school? Yes or no. So no definition. And this is a national survey. It is almost 1/3 of all schools in Norway, which is about 1,000 together, answered this questionnaire. So this is highly reliable data. And if we ask, apply a definition of regularity, which is at least half a day every other week, we see that almost 70% of all schools still have outdoor schooling. So this is quite a lot. Just as a comparison, there is not much mapping about outdoor schooling and how much provision there is worldwide, but there is one study from Scotland in the UK where Mannion and colleagues just found that in Scotland, they measured it in minutes per week. It was about 7 minutes per week outdoor schooling. Here we're talking about at least 360 minutes outdoor schooling per week. So there's quite a difference in that. We see also there's a decline. First graders have more outdoor schooling than 10th graders, and there's a drop from 7th to 8th grade. And that can be explained that the first 7 grades in Norway are without formal or quantitative evaluation. So they don't get grades for their performance. Only from 8th grade do they get grading and marks, I think it's in English, in British English. So once they get marks, the the provision of outdoor schooling drops a little bit, but is still about 40%, which is, I think, immense. And one reason why this high prevalence might be is that 88, so almost again 90% of all schools have a green space that is suitable for outdoor schooling within 10 minutes walking distance. And if you visit Norway one day or have visited Norway, we are not talking about a rotten park area. We're talking about breathtaking areas at the shore, in the mountains, in a nice forest. So those are really natural places. A place exactly one that had been used by the students or the teachers in the schools in my project, which I'm going to talk about. Are there any questions so far, or should we just go on, Lucy? What do you think?
No questions at the moment, so probably
Okay, because I'm not following the chat. So
I'll follow it for you. Yeah, I'll let you know if there's any questions.
yes, thank you. You just step in because now I'm talking to a screen and don't see anyone. So that's a weird experience after the pandemic. Still, so yes, so the rationale and the theoretical frame for this study was that we used the stress reduction theory or stress reduction theory, which basically claims that nature has a stress buffering effect on humans. Um, this is a theory that is established, it is used, it has also its criticisms, and I have, yeah, also my concerns about it, but I think it's still a reasonable theory to use as a frame for such a study. Basically, it's the biophilia argument that the human sensory system has evolutionary been developed in natural surroundings, and that what we call culture today um, is quite different from what natural areas provide as sensory stimuli. Um, the the matter of fact that most people still live decent lives in cultural environments is that our brain is so flexible that it can adapt pretty well to all kinds of environments, also digital ones, as I'm doing right now, with artificial lighting and a room that is completely empty because it's a new office and I don't have any books in here. So this is a weird environment for me. I'd rather be in the forest, but now it's dark and cold, -10. So I'm I'm pretty much relying on the artificial heating here. So, but all this comes with a cost, and the cost is stress, or more precisely, distress. So um, the brain is constantly adapting to those stimuli, and this is having some effects. And the idea is that reverse effects, that nature has those natural stimuli and provides us with a smoothing environment, and thus we have less efforts to adapt to these environments. So that's basically the idea. As you can see, it has a lot of holes. I'm not so sure if our ancestors actually conceived the environment as a relaxation, a wellness resort. Nature was where you got killed, or where you had to get your food from. Uh, but anyway, let's stick to the hypothesis that the theory works. We're also using self-determination theory. This is a very established theory. And Ryan and Dettweiler have in their latest issue of their self-determination book proposed that in order to have a flourishing life, a time spent in nature may contribute, as well as the feeling of autonomy, the perception of competence and relatedness. So they're on the verge of introducing a fourth basic psychological need. This is also backed by theories from Martha Nussbaum and Sen about the capabilities approach, basically going back to an Aristotelian eudemic idea of flourishing and well-being. So those two theories together made us think that education outside the classroom might have the potential to positively affect the pupils' stress levels. There's previous research on forest bathing in Japan, where it is established that there's lower cortisol levels with people who embrace trees and enjoy themselves in the forest. So we have 3 fundamental research questions. First, we want to see how the education outside the classroom intervention affects the children's biological stress regulation during the school lessons. So this is going on an immediate effect that is measured directly in the course of a school day. And when we want to look in the brain, we see at research question 2, how is the structural brain development in the course of 1 school year? So basically scanning the brains of the children before and after the school year, and hushing up everything that's in between. And then the third question is, how's the children's brain function under a stress test after 1 year of outdoor schooling? That's the regions in the brain we are most interested were in the limbic system, so the amygdala, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the hippocampus, which belong to the brain regions that are phylogenetically the oldest. So that ties back to the biophilia argumentation that, you know, this is an evolutionary argumentation here. And it's also interesting, maybe also interesting here to note that especially the anterior cingulate cortex has the function to is kind of associated with cognitive control and choice of actions. And this has something, this is linked in our paper to a subscale of the SDT, self-elimination theory, subscale of autonomy, which is choicefulness. I'll talk about this in a minute, but just to make this connection here already, that we also try to make those associations that have been established in literature. So you can also see that enrollment is quite low. It's an MRI study, so 10 is probably considered almost good in a control group, but of course this is completely underpowered. And the reason why the control group is so low is that once the parents heard about the possibility of an outdoor class in the term, so we prepared the schools for 2 years, we set up the design, we applied for the funding, we set up the design, and there were 4 classes. 2 were planned going out, 2 were planned of being in the intervention, in the control group. We came back from summer holidays. First day in the school, we wanted to make everything clear. And the headmaster, with a smile in his face, told us, well, guess guys, the intervention was so successful, advertised, that so many children wanted to go into the intervention class. So we started out with 3 classes in the forest and only 1 staying indoors. So basically, without consulting with us, they just changed the setup in the school. And of course, we are dependent on them, and of course, we want to partner. So that was the reason why the control group was actually very low. So we had to convince parents to send their children to the scanner, drive them to the hospital, get them into the scanner 2 times, and for the children to take measurements like cortisol, so having salvia probes and wearing accelerometers. So this was kind of a a challenge to still get the control group enrolled. So welcome to educational research and the realities of life given versus a well-designed study. For the design, remember we were interested in both acute effects that could be measured during a school day. So that's the vertical line with measurement points at 8:30 a.m., 10:30, and 12:30. And we had 3 measurement occasions during the school year, one in the beginning of the school year, at midterm, and at the end of the school year. And so in the beginning, we had the MRI, the imaging at T1. At the end of the school year, we had the T2 for the MRI, and we had the stress test in the scanner. So two different measurements, one functional, one structural in the scanner. We measured cortisol 3 times over the school day, one in the beginning when they came to school, one at midday or mid-morning, and one at the end of the school day. And we measured autonomy, of course, more, but I'm just talking about autonomy here, as a pedagogical or psychological variable that's telling something about the children's self-perceived degree of autonomy, and especially the subscale choicefulness, which is basically boils down to the question, do you feel that you can make choices during the school day? So choices with respect to learning, but also with respect to the level of academic, what's the word? Academic. Now I'm trying to speak Norwegian. The level of academic, level. So challenge. Excuse me. Yeah, and it could also be interpreted in terms of, where can I go? How much physical freedom do I have during the intervention or during teaching? So those are the measurements I'm talking about, the variables, and we conceived autonomy, as I said, as a subscale. I still used it here as a manifest variable, but we tested for measurement invariance in the measurement model. And this actually works. So, but for the sake of for the statistical models, it was just smart to operationalize a latent variable as a manifest variable, because as you can see, the models are very complex and the data set is quite sparse. Still, we used multivariate models and structural equation models framework. So this is a model of the growth curve with the cortisol, and LPA is light physical activity, and controlled for the 3 measurement occasions in a season. And what you can see is that, and this is probably the most robust and interesting finding in our study, that the cortisol response is associated with light physical activity, and it is lower, this cortisol response. So the decline of cortisol is higher of the school day in the intervention group than it is in the control group. And this is kind of surprising and nice, because if you look at cortisol and how it behaves, there is over the day, the highest values of cortisol are in the morning, right after you get up. And then a healthy child or healthy adults should have a decline of cortisol over the day with a plateau phase in the afternoon and going down again in the evening. So it's like a steady decrease of cortisol is something that would be wishful and healthy. If cortisol's level are not going down over a longer time and over a longer period, this is something worrisome. And what we could see is that despite, and cortisol is also reacting to physical activity. So if you have high physical activity, then it is very likely that you have high cortisol values, which is not necessarily bad, and they would go down quite quickly if you don't have any other stresses. But high physical activity actually shoots cortisol levels into the sky. Now, our data show that high physical activity, moderate to vigorous physical activity level in the forest is much higher than indoors. So we would expect actually quite a contamination of cortisol by vigorous physical activities in the forest rather than in the school. And sedentary behavior actually is quite neutral to cortisol as a physical activity. And if you look at the data, you can see that light physical activity levels are almost the same indoors and outdoors. So this activity class is pretty much the same. The children differ in sedentary behavior, which is higher in the control group, and moderate to vigorous physical activity, which is higher in the intervention group. So expectedly, the children in the intervention group could have higher cortisol values at the end of the school day. That means less decrease. But that was not the case. They had significantly lower cortisol levels at the end of the school days, so higher decrease. And this was associated with light physical activity in the forest, but not with light physical activity in the control group. That means that something in the environment could be a cause here. And this is again now theory driven or in compliance with other research that it is actually the environment in the forest that does the work here. So that's what we have argued. This is again significantly, so statistically, a rather strong finding. But so the effect in the model is strong. The model itself is a little bit weak with respect to power. So we ran this with Bayesian SEM. So this helps a lot to stabilize the data, but still take this with a big question mark. And this is the strongest finding I can present you. So again, this is just the beginning. Now, if we look at the brain development over the school year, this is a quite complicated model. So Y1 is stands for the brain structure, the ROI in the brain, the three regions, T1 and T2. And we have group, GRP, gender, age as variables that actually affect both time points, and cortisol and autonomy slash choicefulness only impacts at T2. So this is how we conceptualize the model. It's actually a model proposed by Judea Pearl to treat pre-post data without running into paradoxes like Lord's paradox or so. So you have both the residualized model and the t-test in this model. I pick out.
Sorry. Could I ask a question from the chat? It's a clarification question. Is it true you've done a structural MRI scan at the start of the school year and a functional MRI scan at the end of the year? Or have
Yes.
you? Yeah.
So, So it's a functional only at T2 at the end of the school year and structural at both times.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes. So you can see not much in the results. So we have the age effect for the hippocampus, that's clear. Children develop in that time, and if you control for age, it takes out all the other effects. That's fair enough. We have, with the thickness of the anterior cingulate cortex, so that's interesting. We have a direct group effect, which is actually contra our expectations. So better maturation associated or more maturation associated with the control group. But there's something with autonomy, choicefulness. And if we decompose these effects into the groups, you see different, so they have the same direction, but the effect is stronger in the intervention group. So the solid line has a steeper decline. And so actually, this is interesting. It is an effect that is so la significant on an 85% credible interval. But this means that we have greater maturation actually with children in the intervention group than in the control group. So, and this is, so children, so the association between choicefulness is such that with thickness or maturation of the RACC is that children who perceive themselves as choicefulness, so having a lot of choices during the school day, they tend to have better developed ACC, and remember that's the center where cognitive control and choice of action is associated with. So that's something happening here. And this effect is stronger. So it's both, it's the same for both groups, but it's stronger in the intervention group. So children in the forest actually have tend to have more matured RACC than the children in the control group, and in a region that is associated with choice of action or the emotional substrate of it. So that's, I would say, an interesting hypothesis. I wouldn't call this evidence, but this is a pathway that's paving a research field that we could follow. And there's now we talk about brain function under stress. Again, there's all those variables: group, age, gender, cortisol, and autonomy / choicefulness with the activation of the brain region. And then we have the interaction effects. I want to pick out one, especially with the amygdala, an interaction effect, cortisol by group in the and the activation. Here we can see that the intervention group and who have lower cortisol levels at the end of the school day actually have less brain activation under a stress test. So the stress test was the Montreal stress imaging test adopted to children of 10 to 12 years. So basically they were lying in a scanner and had to do some math tasks, and they got negative feedback all the time. And the experimenter told them that they need to do better, and their peers were doing much better than they were, and so they were really stressed. So this was I wonder how we got the ethics committee to approve this, but this is an established test. Of course, they got a big reward, a 1-week outdoor education course with Outward Bound Germany. So this was the big reward. So this finding was interesting. There were other findings that were equally striking, that there were a lot of children who had negative activations when we, so the contrast of the stress control measurement was negative. That means that actually they had higher activation during the control task than during the stress task. And so this is interesting insofar as normally you would expect the opposite, that the stress task is actually stressing and not the control task, or even the rest phase. So this is something we explained with either that the children completely dissociated from the task. So they couldn't bother more than being stressed by some stupid experimenter. And this actually was stronger in the outdoor group that had more choicefulness and more training in making choices. So they might well have made a very mature choice, not led to stress themselves from a stupid experiment. Or it could be explained that they just dissociated or compensated with different brain regions that we haven't looked at. So there we would have to do a whole brain analysis. That was not our goal. So again, this is something that needs to be further researched, and what I think is what we have done is provided some first steps or first pieces of a puzzle that need to be put together. As I asked you in the beginning in my apology, this is a very vulnerable experiment with a very small sample size and unbalanced designs and a very coarse resolution of trajectories. So we don't know what the kids have done other than from those periods they have worn accelerometers and gave us probes of their saliva to check for cortisol. We tried hair cortisol, but the probes were not good enough. So there's a lot to make better the next time. And actually, I'm about to apply for money for the Norwegian Research Council to repeat the study in a little bit more stable way and have more children involved. The strength, it's clearly the first of its kind, and also nice people have talked nicely about this study, as Louis Chobla, that this is research that needs to be done and needs to be expanded on, especially in such fields as outdoor education, where, as I have shown, at least in the Nordic countries, have a very, very high prevalence. And so if children spend 20% of their times outdoors in Norway, we better know what's happening there. So this is how I want to conclude. Our ideas support the idea. They are at least not in the opposite direction. That outdoor education, or education outside the classroom, more precisely, can have a positive effect on biological stress regulation systems. And this is pretty much what I have to say. You can find some references. And yeah, I think I leave it here and for you to rip me to pieces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ulrich. That was really interesting. Very, like you say, different study, and I think it's, yeah, like you say, could lead towards more theories and more research ideas, which is fantastic. So if anyone's got any questions, please pop them in the chat. I've got one already. So have you
Could I
looked?
stop sharing my screen so I can see people?
Oh yeah.
Yes, good.
Fabulous. Yeah, if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, they're welcome to. When in the chat we've got one that says, have you looked at any children with additional learning needs? I assume with regards to your research in outdoor education.
So again, I didn't follow the question.
Have you looked, have you included children with special additional learning needs in any of your studies?
No, we did not screen, but this is a private school and with a pretty high entrance demand. So we expected all the children be pretty much on the same page, both academically and socially also. So social economic background did not play a role here. It's all white children. So weird. It's a weird population, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Gemma, did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I'm just finishing up my PhD, which has looked at the impact of outdoor learning on children's stress. So I've come across lots of your papers already, so it's really nice to hear you speak about it. I wondered whether you have ever measured the noise levels indoors compared to outdoors, and if not, why not? And would you consider that in any future studies? Because the research I've done, it's kind of shown up as potentially being quite an important mediator.
Noise and lightning, both very much. So I have the noise on my agenda for the next study. Have you looked at noise?
Yeah, yeah.
And
so yeah,
you
recorded
found
it indoors and outdoors, and it's significantly quieter in outdoor lessons, even when the activities are matched, which wasn't surprising.
Of course not.
I've kind of looked at those correlations between noise and resting heart rate as well, and they're significantly correlated indoors, but not outside. So it seems like there's this kind of protective factor of being outside, which even when the noise is reaching quite high levels, it seems to not be impacting the children's heart rate in the same way as it does when they're in the indoor classroom.
Yeah, I just looked at sensors that could capture all those features inside the classroom. Also, air quality is something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So noise, definitely. There's not so many studies looking at noise. There's some old Swedish studies in the classroom, and comparing it to outdoor noise. So congratulations. I'd be happy to read your thesis or your papers.
Thanks, that would be great.
Just get in contact. So brilliant. Now, this is actually very important. And lightning. So light has a very strong impact, I believe.
Yeah, light, air quality, and visual complexity are three things I wish I'd been able to add into the study as well. But
yes, I too, but somewhere you have to make a pragmatic choice.
yeah.
But noise is very nice. There's interesting studies by a German philosopher, Gernot Böhmer. He coined the term atmosphere, and noise or soundscapes is a very interesting feature of an atmosphere. So just think about how we react to film music. So film music creates the whole atmosphere for the film, for the story, and frames it. And if you think of classroom sound as a soundscape that shapes an atmosphere, I don't want to see that movie. Definitely not. It's so chaotic and so disturbing and so stressful. So classroom noise is about the worst I can think about as having worked in classrooms and prefer working outdoors. But one of the reasons is the noise, soundscape. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
nice. Very nice. Congratulations. Perfect.
Fantastic. Any further questions either from the room or on chat. If not, I have a question. I suppose building on that, Ulrich, do you think you would see similar results under the impression that this study was done with outdoor learning in a forest? Do you think you would see similar patterns if it was outdoors, say in the center of Oslo, or in a city, but they're outdoors, or versus, I don't know, the coast? Or do you think you'd see this? Is this like a general effect, do you think, or do you think it's very specific to where you're teaching?
So I think the key is engagement, the children's engagement with the environment. And if the park area in Oslo city provides that, has the affordances, provides the affordances, invites the children to actively engage and make choices, I think yes, the soundscape could influence it. But again, as an educator, I would say, if the teaching is engaging, then we blend out other stimuli. So a good teacher always is able to navigate through a ton of affordances. So affordance in the sense of how Gibson coined the term as a feature of the environment that invites for an action. So think what a student in the classroom has for affordances. So a cell phone under the table, just looking here and playing it and hiding it from the teacher has a strong affordance, a strong invitation character. Chatting with a neighbor might be more interesting than listening to the study. Looking outside the window, you name it. So there's a lot of affordances where the student could react to. So what catches the student's interest? This is the engaging in a lesson. This is situational interest the teacher has to sow and to create in their teaching. And in the outdoors, we have the same problematic. There might be a tree that calls out, "Climb me." That's the affordance. And if you choose a place where a lot of affordances, other than those you want to achieve or want to set in effect, then you work against it. So depending on the affordances, you might blend out a noisy road, that's running across the park or along the park. If the engagement is strong enough, I think that's why we found the effects with choicefulness that is on engaging children by making it their own. So, and this is also recent research by Chola, who found that it's about the engagement. It's not the nature itself that does the job. It's the active engagement with the environment. So it's not a passive patient relationship. It's an active agent relationship. That was a quote by Chola.
Interesting. Thank you. There is another question, and I think there's actually one earlier as well. But a question from Catherine: what would be the ideal participant numbers you would like for the intervention and the control groups to power the study effectively?
100 to 100. Let's go to 50 to 50 as a minimum, and that's what I'm aiming for in the next study. 50 to 50 for an MRI study. I think that's quite okay, but still, the more the better.
Yeah, there was a question about why you chose to do the structural at the start and the end, and then the functional scan at the end of the year. Were you hoping to do a functional at the start of the year as well and compare, or just at
no? So we thought, the functional at the end after 1 year of outdoor training. So outdoor education. We thought that we wanted to not to give away you can do the test only once, because then the children know that they are being tricked. So it doesn't work a second time. So you cannot have a baseline. That's why you have a rest. You have two contrasts. You have a contrast where you have a stressor against a rest condition, and then you have a control condition, which is an easy task that everybody can do to have the brain function. So the idea is in the rest condition, lowest activation; in the control condition, medium activation; in the stress condition, highest activation. So you basically have the baseline built into the MIST test. That's why we didn't do it twice. And we did it at the end of the school year because we thought, okay, they had the same cognitive load over the school year, but maybe they had different ways to build resilience against a stressor in the classroom and in the outdoors. And we found, yeah, the resilience was probably that they didn't take on the test, and they said, thank you very much, but I'm mature enough to not to choose to take part in this crazy stimulation. So probably I will not do the stress test again. I think it's too much impact on the children, too stressor. There's different ways to see that. But the structural MRI, I think that's the pathway to go. And also looking at the brain, on the whole brain. So doing a whole brain analysis, definitely.
Excellent, thank you. Is that what you plan to do in your next study, whole brain?
Yes, whole brain analysis and then explore. Go searching.
Fantastic. Are there any further questions for Ulrich? I'll give it a minute in case there's any questions to put in the chat. No? Okay.
So Gemma, you just sent me an email, please, with your papers.
Yeah, sure. How do I get in contact with you?
You just Google me, or you can use Lucy as a mediator.
Okay.
She'd agree.
Yes, no
Or
problem.
you can just put you know what? I put just my email address in the chat. So everyone feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Before everyone disappears, I do have a little advertisement for the upcoming IMBES conference. I'm just going to very quickly share my screen, if that's okay. Hope you can all see that. So this is IMBES, the International Mind, Brain and Education Society Conference 2024. It's being held in Leuven in Belgium on the 10th to the 12th of July. It is for anyone interested in educational neuroscience. So whether you come from an education background or a neuroscience or cognitive neuroscience or psychology background, if you're interested in the field of educational neuroscience, it's a fantastic conference. You can scan the barcode here to get more information or visit the website. They've got some wonderful keynote speakers, Stanislas, Jenny and Duncan from Paris, California and Cambridge respectively. And I've also included some important deadlines in case you're interested in submitting a poster or a symposium or registering yourself and attending. So just wanted to flag that, and we'll be advertising this throughout the seminar series this term. So I'll if there's any questions about that, happy to answer them. I'll leave it up for a second so you can scan the code or anything. Otherwise, thank you so much, Ulrich, for giving your time up and talking to us today about your work. It's really interesting. I think, as you say, very important research. We look forward to hearing how the next series of studies go. And thank you everyone for joining today. And hopefully see you all next week at 4 p.m. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.